Jesus gives the prophecy about himself, okay? And he says, "For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Now, Jesus says this, okay? So, Jesus is not going to lie, right? He's not making it up. So that means that some way or another, he was in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. So we got to figure this out, right? We got to figure this out. So, and figure out exactly. So then when was he crucified? When was he buried? And when did he rise for all of this to be fulfilled? And I think we're going to pretty conclusively, I think we've got some things to share with you tonight that are pretty conclusive as to when Jesus was crucified, what day of the week he was crucified. I think there's a couple things. I think this is one of them. It has to be 3 days and 3 nights, right? And there's maybe one or two other things that I think kind of seal the deal, as far as I'm concerned, as to what day of the week he had to be crucified. Okay, so 3 days and 3 nights. Keep that in mind. All right. Now, in the Catholic Church, for example, they believe and teach that Jesus died on Friday. They call it Good Friday. And that's what they teach, right? That he died on April 7th. Now check this out, guys. This is kind of interesting. I'm going to show you tonight, I think this is incorrect, okay? Now you probably already knew that, but I'm going to show you why it's incorrect. I'm not just going to say it's incorrect. I'm going to show you why. But before I do that, I want to show you something else that's kind of cool here. So they say, they narrow it down. They believe that he either died Friday, April 7th of 2030, of 30 AD, or Friday, April 3rd of 33 AD. Now, we're all looking at the former one, right? Because that's what the psychotics are looking at in terms of their psychotic agenda that they're trying to put into place by 2030, and the whole idea of the seventh, the 70th, the Shemitah cycle, and how that all lines up to 2030 and everything else. So that makes sense, right? For a lot of reasons. But what's also really interesting about this is notice what day they say: Friday, April 7th, 80-30. Well, take a look at our calendar this year, and where does the 7th fall of April? Friday, April 7th. As I said earlier, guys, it's the same calendar. This year is the same calendar, right? The coins on his eyes, Leslie brought up there. Yeah, that's true. I talk about that in the Shroud of Turin video, so be sure to check that out. The coins of his eyes of 29 AD. But I thought this was interesting that they have Friday the 7th of April, because that's actually where the 7th falls this year. It falls on the Friday, and as I shared earlier, if based on the moon sighting, the Palm Sunday also falls on the right day, and the resurrection, the 17th, also falls on Sunday this year. So all of that's very interesting, how that's coming together. So whether it was 29 AD, 30 AD, that's another discussion, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So here's what I propose is the accurate breakdown of when he was crucified and rose again, and I'm going to explain why biblically. Okay, so 3 days and 3 nights, okay? So first of all, Jesus said it had to be 3 days and 3 nights. Now, there is a thought it could have even be Wednesday, but I'm going to explain why I don't think that's the case biblically. I think it's pretty locked tight as to why that isn't the case, and pretty locked tight as to why it couldn't be Friday either. Now, Friday obviously would not be 3 days and 3 nights, right? Because if he's crucified on Friday, you don't have 3 days and 3 nights. I mean, now you could say, well, if he's buried on Friday and then Friday night, and then Saturday and Saturday night, but then you don't have Sunday and Sunday night. So that doesn't really work, right? So it can't really be Friday. Now you could try to say Wednesday, but I'm going to show some reasons why I don't think it's Wednesday either, because of some other reasons. But basically the idea is that Jesus was crucified on Thursday, and as we'll see biblically, they had to hurry up and bury him before the Sabbath began. So that means they got him in the grave on Thursday proper, on the actual day of the 14th. Excuse me, sorry. So then we go into the nighttime, which is technically the 15th now, but I know it's confusing to our minds. But either way, you have let's just say you have one day and you have one night. You have sunrise, sundown. It's a little confusing. So if you just look at it as, okay, he's buried that day, and then you also have that night. And then you go to the next day, which would be Friday, you have that day, and you have that night. And you go to the next day, and you have that day, and you have that night. So that's 3 days and 3 nights. And therefore, and then he rises, he would have to rise then on Sunday. But then you go, well, wait a minute, isn't that too long? But that's where you have to think like in Jewish time. So if he's buried on Thursday, on Nisan 14, but then that night is technically the 15th, and then he's in the 15th on the grave. And then you have the nighttime of the 15th, which is 16, and then he's in 16th on the day on Saturday. And then Sunday begins on the evening of Saturday. So when it says he's raised on the third day or raised on the first day of the week, technically any time after sundown on Saturday he could have been raised, and it would be the third day. You see what I'm saying? So you got one day, one night, one day, one night, one day, one night, and then he's raised on that third day. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to see some more here in the scriptures why that makes sense. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so Mark 15. And I did a whole study on this over the summer, and I can't find it. It's in one of my long videos, and who knows, it's somewhere, but it was really good. I mean, if I say so myself. But no, I mean, I think it was really in depth. I go into a lot more depth than I'm going to go in right now. So if I can find it, or anybody remembers when that was or can find it, let me know. But I go into a lot of depth about this whole timing and everything. It's really interesting. I spent a lot more time on it. So anyway, but shorter version today. But but basically, Mark 15 says it was preparation. I'm going to go through all the Gospels here. So basically, it says this in every Gospel. It talks about the first day of the week in every Gospel, and I believe Preparation Day is mentioned in every Gospel too. So, Preparation Day, what's Preparation Day? We're going to find out. It was Preparation Day, that is the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, now this is when Jesus was crucified. So he was crucified on Preparation Day. Really? Yeah. Oh, interesting. Why would they call it Preparation Day? Okay, well, we'll find out. Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate, asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Okay, so it's the same day. Jesus is still on the cross. It's the same day, and it's called Preparation Day. It's a day before the Sabbath. Okay, and so summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus was already dead. When he learned that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph brought some linen cloth, took the body down, wrapped it in linen, placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid. Okay, so that's one. Let's keep going. Luke 23 says, it was Preparation Day, and the Sabbath was about to begin. Okay, same thing. He goes and asks for Jesus' body. He takes it down. It's Preparation Day. The woman who came with Jesus from Galilee saw the tomb, how the body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes. But keep this in mind, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment. Now remember that, because that's going to play a role in just a second. Okay, they rested on the Sabbath. So they made all these spices to anoint the body, but they rested on the Sabbath. John 19:31 says, therefore, because it was the preparation day, that the body should not remain on the cross on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day, a high Sabbath, okay? The Jews asked Pilate that their legs might be broken, that they might be taken away. Okay, so remember that. So it's a high Sabbath day. Well, what does that mean? Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Okay, so they were in kind of a hurry because of this day of preparation. This day of preparation was very important, and so they had to hurry up because it was almost over and the Passover was about to start. Now, what is this day of preparation, and what is this high Sabbath that we're talking about? Okay, well, here in the Bible, and we saw this actually earlier when God told Moses back when we were talking about Passover in Exodus, he talks about that day that no one should do anything but cook food on that day. The only thing you can do is prepare food on that day. You shouldn't do anything else on the first day, the 15th day, the day following the 14th, and also the last day. And he reminds them again here in Leviticus, it says, These are the Lord's appointed feasts, the sacred assemblies you're to proclaim at their appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's feast of unleavened bread begins. Okay? So, really, it's almost like it begins on the 15th, but I guess because you're sacrificing, he does it a little bit earlier so that you're not on the Sabbath, because then the 15th begins that evening. For 7 days you must not eat bread. You must eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days present an offering made to the Lord by fire. And on the seventh day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. Okay, so this first day and this last day of this week is called a high Sabbath. Okay, a high Sabbath. High Sabbath. So a high Sabbath, okay. And these are special days that are not the regular Sabbath. It's not the Saturday, right? The Sabado. It's not the regular Sabbath that we have every week. It's a special Sabbath called a high Sabbath. And those are special days of observation where they do no regular work on those days. They're called mikras, or assemblies, right, in Hebrew. And they're observed by Jews and a minority of Christians. 2 of the Sabbath holy assemblies occur in spring on the first and last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? So that's what we're talking about. So when Jesus was crucified, he was crucified on the day before that day. And that's called Preparation Day. And why do they have to prepare for it? It says, like all good things, keeping the Shabbat, or the Sabbath, properly requires advanced preparation. We must prepare our homes, ourselves, the food we'll be eating and serving throughout the Shabbat meals. Shabbat also requires that we have certain things on hand in advance. We can't go shopping if we notice suddenly we're out of a critical ingredient, such as wine. The Shabbat laws forbid us from any mundane household activities. We don't wash the walls or use our vacuum cleaner, turn the lights on or off, cook or even warm up food. So they're even saying they don't even cook or warm up the food. Ensuring that all these are taken care of before Shabbat brings that wonderful feeling of preparing for a special occasion and makes Shabbat all the more meaningful. So, one of the things that happens here is when Jesus is crucified on the 14th, then they go into this Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, they can't have any leaven in their house, any yeast, or they will be cut off from the people. So it's very serious. So this day before, it's like serious preparation, like, dude, we got to make sure there's no yeast in the house, man. We got to make sure that stuff is all cleaned out, or we're going to be in trouble. So it's very serious and it's very intense. So when this was the day Jesus was crucified, was on this preparation day, there's a lot of other things going on that day. The Jews are getting ready with a lot of other stuff, and they don't want this guy on the cross, obviously going into the Sabbath time, and they also need to hurry up and bury Jesus before this Sabbath begins. And because it's late in the evening, they didn't have time to properly prepare the body. So he just quickly wraps it in a linen cloth. I think he maybe put a little bit of embalming stuff there, but then he comes back later. I think who was it brought 75 pounds? I think it was Nicodemus that brought the 75 pounds of stuff. So they did have some initially, but the women went off to prepare the proper stuff and to fully complete the job. So they were going to come back following the Sabbath to do that. Well, okay, if that's the case, if they were going to come back following the Sabbath, and just a few more scriptures on this. It says, the next day, the one after Preparation Day, the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate. Okay, so now we know the next day, the day after Preparation Day, i.e. the Sabbath, the high Sabbath, right? The chief priests and the Pharisees go to Pilate and they ask, we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, after 3 days I will rise again. So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he's been raised from the dead. This last deception will be worse than the first. Okay, so there it is again. The Jews kind of talking about the deception, because the Jews are the ones being deceived now. The Jews are the ones who are blind. And so they're actually the ones who are going to experience the last deception, so to speak. So it's kind of an interesting play on words. Take a guard, go make the tomb as secure as you know how. So they went and made the tomb secure, putting the seal and posting the guard. Okay, so that's the day following. That's that high Sabbath that we're talking about. A couple more on this, and then I'm going to sort of show you why it all works out. Saying, sir, we remember the deceiver while he was alive. After 3 days, I will rise again. What's interesting, that word after is actually meta. We've talked a lot about that word meta. It can mean after, but it more commonly means with. So it could be more interpreted within 3 days, but it really means more with or amidst, in the midst. So within 3 days, you could argue, but it's that word meta. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There it is again. And after the Sabbath, okay, so now, here's how we know it wasn't Friday and that it wasn't Wednesday, okay? Or at least it's strongly, I'd say 90% to 99% pretty much says that it has to be Thursday, okay? It says, after the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. Okay, so we know that the Sabbath, the regular Sabbath, falls on the seventh day of the week. And that's Matthew. Here in Mark, it says it too. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, brought spices so they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Remember they went to prepare those spices, but they couldn't do it because it was a Sabbath? Well, that was the high Sabbath. But now here's the regular Sabbath. So now they got to wait after this Sabbath because it's very early on the first day of the week after sunrise. Okay? So they had to wait through two Sabbaths. Okay? You've got the high Sabbath, and then you got the regular Sabbath. On the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the women took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. I mean, wow. So they've been waiting a couple of days already, at least the high Sabbath and at least the regular Sabbath, right? And it couldn't have been Friday because that wouldn't be 3 days and 3 nights, so it has to be at least Thursday, if not Wednesday. But here's why I don't believe it's Wednesday, is because in every account, they went on the first day of the week. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb, saw the stone had been removed, so she came, etc., etc. So they went on the first day of the week each time, right? Well, why is that significant? Because going back to this outline of when he was crucified, if it was done on Wednesday, if he was crucified on Wednesday, then the high Sabbath would have been Thursday, and the regular Sabbath would have been Saturday. That means that those spices they went and prepared could have been brought on Friday if he was crucified on Wednesday, but they didn't. They didn't bring it on Friday. Friday wasn't a Sabbath, so they could have gone in on Friday. Why would they wait until Sunday? Why would they wait until the first day of the week? You know, the body is decaying, and it probably has a really bad smell, because just like Lazarus had a bad smell after 4 days, it's been 3 days. It's like, it's not going to smell too good for those guys going in there, having to put this stuff on there. They're really carrying their cross there, but they want to go in and they want to take care of Jesus, right? But why wouldn't they do it on Friday? If he was crucified on Wednesday, there would have been a high Sabbath Thursday that they couldn't do it, and a Sabbath, regular Sabbath on Saturday, but they could have done it on Friday. But they didn't do that. They did it on Sunday. And so that means almost unanimously that he had to be crucified on Thursday, because you had the high Sabbath on Friday, you had the regular Sabbath on Saturday, and then they went in on Sunday on the first day of the week when he was resurrected. And that is when they intended to put the embalming upon him. So thought that was pretty interesting. A couple more thoughts on this, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Let's see where I am here. So then you had these other guys. Another thing that points to this 3 days as well is that Jesus appears on the road to Emmaus to some disciples, right? And, they're sad, they're downcast. He's like, what are you guys so sad about? And he appears to them after his resurrection, obviously, because otherwise he would have been, he wouldn't have appeared to them physically. He couldn't appear to them yet. So he appears to them on the road to Emmaus, but they don't recognize him. And he kind of pretends to be, a stranger to them. And it's Jesus' acting debut that we know of. David also had one as well. But I named a theater company I had called Only a Stranger Productions, because they say to him, are you only a stranger and don't know what's been going on? And so he pretends to be a stranger, essentially, or at least goes along with that, and then blows them away with the scriptures, of course. But they explain why they're down. They're like, we hoped that he would be the hope that was going to save all of Israel. And he says, what is more, it is the third day since all this took place, right? Since all this took place. Now, the word since there is kind of interesting, because that word actually means separation or from. So it's the third day from or separate from when this took place. Well, if you go back here again, the third day from when it took place would be Sunday. It took place on Thursday, and the third day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, from when that took place would be Sunday, the first day of the week. So I thought that was kind of cool as well. And then Jesus reiterates it to them when he responds to them. He told them, this is what is written, the Christ will suffer and rise from the dead on the third day. So that's in the same conversation with those guys saying this is the third day from when it took place. So I thought that was pretty cool and pretty much seals the deal that Jesus rose from the grave on the 17th, right? So here, when they went home and they prepared the spices, they rested on the Sabbath, right? They were resting on the high Sabbath, but they would have gone in on Friday if it wasn't a Sabbath. But it wasn't Friday, it was Saturday by that point, you see? And they went in on the first day of the week.